Okay, we're on part G, our last part of this experiment, and we're going to look at this equilibrium that exists between a copper chloride complex and the copper water complex. Okay, and they are two different colors. So what we're starting off with first is this copper chloride complex, which is this kind of lime green color here. Okay. So, this is our control test tube. We're going to keep that in the first slot. To test tube number 2, we're going to add 5 mils of deionized water. So, here we go. Look at that. Change colors. Okay, test tube number 2. To test tube number 3, we're going to add 10 drops of silver nitrate. So starting off with our stock solution, we're going to add 10 drops. Now this got immediately cloudy. There's a precipitate forming, and we're going to give it a minute or two, and we're going to see what we see after that precipitate settles, like we saw in the last part. So I'm going to stick that in our tray here, our test tube rack. Put that aside for a moment. We're going to go on to test tube number 4, where we're going to add a small scoop of ammonium chloride. Okay, we've got our stock solution with our green color here. And a little bit more. We want to shake it up. What do we see? Oops, sorry, I was out of camera view. So we have some precipitate or some excess ammonium chloride. It's mixed up, and here's our color. Let's put it back on our test tube rack and give that a minute to simmer. Okay, to test tubes number 5 and 6, we're going to put in our hot water bath and our cold water bath. So I'm going to shift over here a little bit. So I'm going to put test tube 5 here in our hot water solution. And test tube 6 is going to go into our ice bath. And we will compare the two different colors. We don't want this to boil. There's some methanol in there. We are seeing a little subtle difference here. Let's give that a minute and we'll come back to that, okay? So let's take a look at our test tubes and see what we see. Okay, so this first test tube was our control, that lime green. Test tube 2, we added some DI water, and we can see that it changed color, and it's a really faint blue. Test tube 3, looks like all that precipitate hasn't settled just yet, but there is a tint of color to it. It's not white or clear. Test tube 4, we added ammonium chloride. And let's go back to our temperature test tubes. There's a little bit of a color difference. You can see on this, I can see that on the screen there. One is a darker green and one's lighter. Okay, so it's subtle, but there is a difference. We can see between the hot and the cold. So from that, we can determine whether this equilibrium is endothermic or exothermic, or this chemical reaction between copper chloride and water. Okay? Okay, that's it. Some of these get a little bit tricky, I know. Do make sure you come to Zoom. Let's talk about these, ask questions, draw your arrows, and you know, you're gonna get some of these on your exams where you're just gonna be given words or things like that, and it's important to be able to predict what's going to happen and why. So, you know, part of it's, you know, we want you to get the right answers and things like that, but it's not just about getting the right answers. Of course, it's about understanding and being able to predict things for the future. Okay, that's it for our video, and hopefully I'll see you on Zoom.